the thing that people underestimate about the price of compromise is the value of the thing they are compromising. I very much wanted to be like everybody else, and I was willing to hide everything about my true self in order to fit in. Inspiration is for kids. You can't wait for inspiration to move you. You have to move inspiration.
Michael, welcome to Herbal Tales.
Thank you very much.
Michael, you were born in Hamburg, raised in Los Angeles with some Tehran in the middle of that journey. What is the first place that you remember emotionally as home?
I guess that would be Tehran. Would be my oldest memories and my most core memories of growing up in the city of Tehran and in the suburbs. Beautiful city, very active, very vibrant, and it really shaped how I look at urban life and city life.
I've heard only good things about it. Unfortunately, I was not able to visit it until now, and I think from now on it's going to be a bit difficult. Let's say it like this.
Yeah.
But I heard only good things about Iran. I have to say there is a journalist in Romania who has a passion for the country, and she was there several times. She wrote some books about it, and she described it fantastic. So it's a pleasure to hear it. I usually like to hear it. What do you miss the most from Iran?
I think what I miss the most is that I took it for granted that it was a city atmosphere. The streets were always very crowded. There was people walking everywhere. There were street vendors. Everybody was very kind and very informal and familiar. People spoke to each other like they were neighbors, even if they were complete strangers. And so there was a sense of comfort and belonging that I really did appreciate.
It's crazy how we take life for granted because it's nothing else but then life, right?
Of course.
What stories did your parents carry with them from Iran to the States, Michael?
Well, I think that the stories that they carried with them are the stories that stayed with them even throughout our time in Los Angeles, which is they both my parents come from very large families and very close families. And so our stories about our immediate family, our uncles and our aunts and our grandparents and their parents, it was a constant and very alive kind of a story, meaning that it was always being told and it was always being updated about where we come from, who we are, who our relatives are, who their relatives are. So it was very family oriented, the stories, and it was, about where they came from and what they had to rise up from. Obviously, a lot of them came from poor backgrounds, and they had different professions or jobs that they had to work at. And sometimes those stories get woven into our upbringing as well. And so it was always fascinating to sit down and listen to my father, who passed away recently, but also my mom, and all of their cousins and all of their siblings. We are a family of storytellers, and I think that's the original story was oral, and I think it still is.
That's so nice. Were you in the US alone as a family, or was also some relatives as well there when you moved?
When we moved, it was the late 1970 when we moved. We still had a lot of family in Iran at the time because when we left, there was no revolution, there was no political crisis of any kind. We just went like most people who come to America. They come to seek a land of opportunity. Yeah, we still had a lot of relatives there. We also had some relatives in New York, and so it was not completely foreign to come to America. But we did leave a lot of cousins and aunts and uncles there who eventually came anyway. Closer to the revolution.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. How old were you when you moved to the States, Michael?
I was just under 7. So I was a little bit past 6.5. In those days, we used to consider half.
Yeah.
So yeah, I had just finished. I was in the middle of second grade when we left Tehran in the winter.
I don't know how to formulate the question because I thought a lot how to put it, because I think to ask you how did you find US with 7, I think it's a bit of a not so clever statement, because I don't think you can make any kind of difference. But what is the first thing that you remember from the States when you arrived?
Um, okay. Well, the first thing I remember is that it was winter, and on our way from Tehran to our destination in Los Angeles, we stopped in New York to visit my mother's sisters, and that was the where our landing spot in
Mm-hmm.
America was in New York, and we had a couple of cousins who were living there, who had come there earlier, a couple of years earlier, and so it was a very neighborhoody place in Queens, and we immediately got into a very violent snowball fight with some of the neighbors, and that's my first experience. Was I didn't know what was exactly happening, but I could sense the aggression. It wasn't like a fun snowball fight; it was like a fight. And my older cousins who lived in New York really protected us. They tucked us under their arms, and they were very good at building those snowballs and firing them back pretty hard. And so that's what I remember most about the first couple of days of being in America, was that we immediately had like this us versus them positioning, and it was a bunker mentality, but it was exciting too. It was winter, and it was snow, and uh, it was uh, it was kind of an exciting place. It was very active, and so I appreciated that a lot.
Well, I'm a huge fan of New York. I'm a huge fan of the US in general, but I'm a huge fan of New York. I would be so interested because I watch so many documentaries now. YouTube is helping a lot, and I see a lot of New York from the 60s, 70s, 80s. So I think
Yes.
you can see all the eras. One of my favorite book. I don't know if you know it. It was an article actually in a newspaper, which is called "This Is New York."
Mhm.
Written, I think, in the 30s, 40s. An amazing article, somehow telling the
Oh,
story of New York.
I
It's a
will look at it.
you don't know it?
No.
It's a small book. I think I don't know if it's printed. I managed to find an old copy somewhere on Amazon, and I ordered it. And I have to say it's an amazing. He's telling the story of New York, like who's owning which store, who's what is that, which kind of coffee place was there,
That's great.
because the size was like that back then, and you see then the progress to now. It's just
Yes.
crazy. He's describing the streets. He's describing Broadway. Oh my god, this is I'm getting goosebumps as I remember
Yes.
about the book. I have to read it again.
Yeah.
um, but being a 7 year old, you said you arrived you landed in New York, you visited family, and then you went directly to LA. So you had LA as goal. Your family had LA as goal.
Yeah, my father had left Tehran a few months ahead of us, and
Okay.
so he found a house, and it was near a school. It was across the street from a school, and he signed us up for the winter semester. And
Mm-hmm.
so, I mean, he did a lot of good advanced legwork, because we arrived in Los Angeles just after New Year of 1971, and I think like it was on a Thursday or a Friday that we arrived in Los Angeles, and on Monday we were in school. On Monday, the second semester of second grade had begun, and I was standing in front of those kids and being introduced to them, and started my life as an American.
Wow, that's interesting. But you are speaking the language. I do guess even if you're speaking English, you're speaking on the lower or not at all. Okay.
I was one of the few fortunate kids in my grade in Tehran who was allowed to sit for English lessons, and so I
Oh.
had some very elemental English lessons. It was mostly vocabulary
Mm-hmm.
and some sentence structures. So yeah, I mean, when I got to Los Angeles, I really didn't know how to use any of the words that I'd learned, and also you can't really understand what a lot of people are saying because they speak it with their own accents and they speak it very fast. They're not teaching you; they're just talking, and so it really became that challenge for me to listen and to see if I can make out the words and see if I could make sense of the words. And that I feel like I really spent all of second grade and most of third grade just doing that, just listening and trying to find my own glossary of what everything means, and then trying to use it in the way that I think it was supposed to be used, even though I think I used it wrong, used the language wrong a lot of times. But all of that became material for my novel because it was this uh, challenge. And at the time that, when you're 7 years old and you're going through it, it's not fun at all. But when you look back on it, 30 years later or 40 years later, there's a charm to it, and there's a sweet, nostalgic, bittersweet nature to it, and it was a real uh, challenge and experience that now I look back on. I think I was lucky that it happened to me. It made me more sensitive to things around me. It made me more of a listener and an interpreter in a lot of ways. So it gave me a lot of skills that I used as an adult.
I think what you said, it's somehow the painful side, because being a 7-year-old is not easy in general. Being a 7 8 year
Right?
old, and even being a 7 8 year old in a country where you don't speak the language, I think makes it's at least double so hard,
Yeah, real
as
challenge.
it's in your mother language. But like you said, I mean, there's the capacity to learn, to develop empathy for the other people being in the
Yeah,
same situation, because I think this is something which is missing a lot on a lot of people these days. But I think you develop it only when you are in this hard situation, when you are struggling to do something, and then we see people having them in your situation. I think you are more open or more receptive to help them, because
absolutely.
that
Yeah, you have to experience it yourself. And by the way, nobody chooses to experience those things. Nobody chooses to experience those challenges, which is why uh, if you're fortunate enough to be challenged like that or to face those kind of situations, you don't feel fortunate in the moment. But later on, when you've survived it and you've developed that empathy or that ability to ride straddle two cultures or to try to understand two cultures, those all become skills that work nicely as an adult and in a crazy world. And again, you don't wish that on somebody and you don't seek that out, but you do feel fortunate that you went through it and you got through it.
absolutely. I keep saying that this expat life, or whenever you are living in a country which is not your own country, it gives you it takes the limits away from you, because you
Yeah,
realize everything is possible. Like, you can do anything if you manage to do it in a different language. Being 7, I think it gives you confidence that you can actually do anything.
yeah.
how how did you feel the? I know it's a bit maybe an exaggeration or the exaggerated question or a far fetched question, but I want to ask you, how did you feel the American culture growing up there? So I know the American culture from the TVs, not from the 70s, but still from the movies. I saw it like those neighborhoods, nice neighborhoods, everyone taking care of everyone, children playing in the streets. Is that what you remember as well, or that was just fantasy and movies?
Well, I mean, there were children playing in the streets. My street, I lived on a street where there were several kids my age, and they all went to school across the street, same school that I did. So that definitely exists. That existed in Iran too, so it wasn't necessarily specific to America. But my recollection of it was that my first impression of America was a tough one. It was not. I didn't necessarily feel welcome, and I didn't make a lot of friends very fast. And kids at that age can be very cruel in general, whether they're American or not. And the playground where we all spent so much of our daily routine is a tough place to grow up. So, um, my impressions of America really changed and developed over a long period of time. And it wasn't really until I was uh, in my 20s that I really appreciated what America had to offer and what Americans as people, as a culture, had to offer. Their generosity or their time or their willingness to share things about themselves and about their worlds. That wasn't really the case when you're in second grade and third grade and fourth grade. So the first impressions was a tough one, almost a violent one, um, and so I was pleasantly surprised in my 20s and forward um, about how generous and wonderful Americans really are or can be. Let's put it that way. They all have the capacity of being really great and generous, and I experienced it myself firsthand. So I know America might have a reputation outside of its borders, but really, it's a country full of very generous and good people. We just have to, stumble upon them, I guess.
It's a nice and poetical a nice poetical way to put it. So they have the capacity, all right. And I
Yes.
have to say, based on my experience as well, I do agree with you for sure, 100%. There are a lot of people that have the capacity to be kind, to help, be helpful.
Yes.
But like in every other culture, Michael, I think you have the dry trees, which are creating problem, and you have them in America, you have them in every culture. So I think it's not something special for the States. But
Yeah.
yes, being a child. Kids can be unnecessarily mean and
Yeah.
unnecessarily direct,
Yeah.
and they have no other level. They have only one level, and that's straight in your face, and that's it. And I think that
Yes.
makes the things complicated.
Yeah, it does. It does. It makes it very hard to come out of yourself and to put yourself out there. You become a very cocooned kind of a person, and I think again that's how it is in every culture. When you're in elementary school, that age group is just a tough. They can be mean and nasty at that age. And also very vulnerable and sensitive as well. I think the language barrier and the cultural barrier made it a little bit harder uh, to navigate all of that. Um, but again, the tougher those things are, the more you learn, and the more you have the ability to figure things out. So yeah, I mean, it's yeah, kids can be cruel, but they grow up
I
into
have a
good people mostly.
I have an 8-year old, and trust me, he can be honest and painful in the same time. So
Oh yeah, that's very good. Honest and painful. That's right.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's so painfully direct that you sometimes think, okay, I didn't need that now, but okay.
Yeah.
Um, Michael, American Playground follows the 7-year old, and I hope I'm not butchering the name, Michel Manoukian.
Yes, Manucherian, correct.
Manouchian, yes.
Yes.
After his family's moved from Tehran to Los Angeles in 71. So he has little English, feels the pressure to assimilate somehow, to be assimilated in the culture,
Yeah.
and turns to Bugs Bunny as a kind of a cultural guide of the state. A lot of similarities, I must say now after I know exactly your story, I would say a lot of similarities. But I still want to ask you, Michael, why did you choose to tell this story through the eyes of a 7-year-old?
For me personally, as a writer, um, I've been studying literature and fiction since I was 17, and I've read a lot of great novels. I've read a lot of great short stories. I happen to believe that one of the purest and most honest ways to tell a story is from the eyes of a child. And so I've read other novels that are adult, grown up novels, literary novels that are told through the eyes of a child. And I was always fascinated by that because there is an honesty and a purity to their description of their surroundings and their circumstances. And it lets the reader figure things out in a very unfiltered way. And so I really thought that's a great challenge. And also, I think it spoke to me personally because my experiences in coming to America were very much entrenched in the visions of a 7-year-old, and everything that I kind of experienced was fresh and new and from a child's perspective. And I never really lost that. It was always in the back of my mind, and it informs, even when I tell stories from an adult perspective, that purity of unfiltered uh, absorption is a good storytelling tool, I think. And so it just worked out for me that way.
I think the unfilter is the part which is the most interesting, because I have somehow the feeling that sometimes the world described to an eyes of a child is so clear,
Yes.
even though he doesn't necessarily understand what's happening exactly in it, but the
Yes.
description is clear though.
Yes. And that's what I think makes it fascinating from a literary perspective. Um, the reader um, is allowed in that way to figure out what's actually happening on their own. They're not going to get told what's happening. The child is just telling them these things, showing them these things, and then the adult reader kind of figures out, oh, that's what's going on. Oh, this is you know what I mean? So there's this layer of discovery, I think, that I like from a literary standpoint, that I thought works nicely. It doesn't always work, and it is kind of a risk, because you don't want to lose your audience, and you don't want to mislead the audience. And so you do have to kind of, like, as the writer telling the story from the child's perspective, you have to just be mindful of how it's going to be read down the road. So, these were all challenges that I thought were fun for me as a writer to explore.
But I think at the same time, it gives you the opportunity when you read the book for the second time, you maybe find out things, or you still have surprises in the book
Yes.
that you haven't realized during your first reading. I think that makes it extremely interesting, because I think always the second time when you read a book makes it even more interesting, because you know the main plot, how it ends, but it gives you the chance to see left and right that you haven't seen
Yes.
before.
Yes, I agree. It has a lot of layers, and you don't always see every layer on the first reading.
Correct. Michelle wants to become an Amrikai. I hope I read it right. I try to I try to
You
use the
got it.
words, and I kind of butchered them. I'm sorry for that, but I try to. Um, what did that mean exactly to him? What did being American mean exactly to him?
I think that, like most kids, and also a lot of foreigners when they're in a new country, but also specifically to America at that period of time. America was kind of the standard bearer for so many things. As far as cultural, icons go, from a music standpoint, from a fashion standpoint. The '70s in America, it was sort of the place to be. You wanted to hear their music. You wanted to dress like they dressed, and so um, that's kind of the thing that Michel was striving for. He was so different and so not those things, and he could see around him everybody being that way, and so he just wanted to be like them. He wanted to be as cool as he thought they were, or as funny as he thought they were, or as hip and fashionable as he thought they were. He thought that they were where it's at, where you should be, and he wanted to be part of it. And he was willing to do whatever it takes, you know, to get to that point, including kind of selling out his friends, or, selling out his own culture, or selling out Bugs Bunny. you know, he would have done anything to get to that place. And then, of course, then he learns some lessons along the way, and then things change.
um, do you think it's an inner motivation of the child to become American, or do you think it's more like for the acceptance of the ones around him?
Yeah, I think for this character, I think he really had, his goal was to be inside, and I think that was his thing, was to be in. And I think that it's one of those fool's gold, fool's errand kind of goals, where you really think that that's the holy grail, and you keep chasing it, and at some point you realize it's not the holy grail, and it's not the thing that you should be spending your energies on. But in that moment, you don't see it, and so you just keep pushing towards it any way you can, and figuring out secret codes, or secret pathways, or how what you say to whom, will help you get to that point. So yeah, I mean, I think from the character standpoint, he was an outsider, and he didn't want to be an outsider. He wanted to be inside. And I think a lot of people feel that way, whether they're kids or not, and they all go through that journey of figuring out, is it worth it? Is it worth it to give up a lot of things that are precious to you, just to be on that place where you think everybody is?
I think the main question is, I was talking in one of the other episodes with the guest who was traveling the world, and he said, like, he was seeing all those people, seeing those Instagram posts, like, I was here, I was there, and you are getting somehow someone else's dream to accept it as your dream. And I think it's the same.
Yes.
It's the same in this case. Was that something that you wish for, or you saw the others that they wish to become that, and that's why you thought, okay, maybe that's what I want as well, but you didn't know exactly what you want?
Yeah, I think that the feeling, I don't think the character, or me as the writer, uh, delved deeply into where they were at, other than they were kids who believed, maybe in their own heads, that they were where they were at, where it's supposed to be. They were at the pinnacle of where they're supposed to be. Even though a couple of those characters, when you go into their homes and into their lives, you can see that they also have their own fears and their own insecurities, and all that. The reader notices that, but the main character doesn't see, though he remarks on them, but he doesn't incorporate that too much. And I think that's kind of the part of the process, is that you think the grass is greener on the other side, and you're sure that whatever's on the other side is better than what's on your side. And then you just, it just takes that trial and error of figuring out that no, the grass is green everywhere and the grass is dry everywhere. And everybody wants their grass to be green. Everybody has that insecurity about.
And everybody wants to have their grass being green from the outside, from the other's perspective.
From the outside perspective. Very good. Yeah, exactly. And yeah, so there is a universal insecurity about, fitting in or not fitting in enough, how you're being perceived versus how you see yourself. And are you seeing yourself truly through your eyes, or are you seeing yourself through the eyes of others? These are all those identity questions that I think a lot of people have, but I think mostly it just gets highlighted when you are from a different culture and you're trying to fit into the dominant culture.
For sure. I think it's a hard experience, and you try to do everything to be accepted. But like you said, I think those insecurities we see a lot in our surrounding world today. And I think it's not only about it's not only culture related differences, but also in the normal culture. You want to fit in. You want to not to be the exception, because it's always hard.
Always hard to be the outsider. Yeah,
exactly. Well, I'm not talking about what's right or wrong, but I always think it's hard to be the outsider. Yeah. Michael, I most probably we share the passion as kids, but I need to ask you, why Bugs Bunny?
I actually have done a lot of interviews since the book came out, and a lot of people ask me that same question.
I'm sorry for that.
No, it's a good question, and I think it's the right question to ask, actually. Well, first of all, for me personally, I grew up. I learned a lot of English and a lot of American from TV and radio, and so when I was 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, I spent a lot of time in front of the TV set watching Bugs Bunny cartoons. They were just very funny. But then as a writer and as a creator of this book and this character, I thought that Bugs Bunny was a very symbolic and emblematic figure in American culture. And so I liked what he represented. Bugs Bunny was created just after World War II, in a time when America felt very righteous and very strong and very tough. And so he had that mentality. Bugs Bunny was a very tough guy. There's no situation that he couldn't get himself out of. And he did it with a certain amount of humor and grace, always landing on top. And I just thought, that's an America that everybody admired. That's an America that everybody, applauded because they helped to win World War II, or because they were just on this righteous path in those days. And he really did represent all that, and the dirty side. I mean, he was also a trickster, and he was also a menace, And so I thought he was a good symbol of all of the things that America has rolled into one rabbit that everybody wanted to kill. So I thought that he would be a good conscience or a guide, and I really thought about the story of Pinocchio and how Pinocchio had Jiminy Cricket as his guide, as his conscience. And I thought, well, this character also wants to be a real boy, and he needs a guide to help him navigate. And so Bugs Bunny could be his Jiminy Cricket, and give him like advice, and tell him what to watch out for, and steer him in the right direction.
But that's a good thing, a good point that I haven't thought about. It's somehow Bugs Bunny is the perfect mix of strong, but also sometimes having the audacity to do the things that nobody expects to be done.
Yes.
And I think that's a really good point. That shows the strength or the power that the US had after the Second World War.
Yes.
Um, I have to ask you something. So I don't know if you know the TV series Friends. It
Friends?
was really Yes,
Yeah, yeah,
yes.
I'm aware of it. Yes.
You are aware of it. So there is I love Friends. I've seen all the episodes, and there are some moments in there which I especially like, and I realize they are true more and more. So Phoebe is playing a concert for in the kindergarten, and she has those crazy songs like "Smelly
Yes.
Cat" and so on with those crazy lyrics,
Uh-huh.
and the kids asked her about the lyrics, and at the end she said, "Oh, kids are listening." And I see that with my son, that kids are listening even if you speak in their own language. And I want to ask you, being an immigrant kid makes you listen even more before you participate in something, or makes you more observant that you would be if you'd be a kid in your culture.
I think it depends on the circumstances of the kid. I agree with Phoebe. The kids are listening. Um, I don't know if they listen as much as today as they did when we were kids, and it was sort of imposed upon us to listen. Um, but children are open sponges, and they absorb everything, even if they're not aware of it, and even if you're not aware of it. So they are observant. They are listening. We don't always watch what we say in front of them, so a lot of times we as adults are unfiltered adults, and the kids absorb that as well. So yeah, I think kids are listening, and kids are capable of listening much more than we as adults think. A lot of times you don't even recognize that there's a child in the room, or you don't recognize that there's a child who is listening. And I did when I was a kid. I listened to everything my parents said, even if they didn't understand that I was listening. I listened to their phone conversations. I listened to them uh, gossiping with their friends, my mom and her friends, gossiping. I heard everything, you know? And so kids are great that way. Kids are actually,
I have I have an 8-year-old. I said before, and he's speaking. We speak English most of the time with him. He speaks German. He learned in school. We try to add Romanian to his vocabulary because he still has to speak with our parents and to communicate with his grandparents. And
yeah.
he doesn't really speak the language, but every time when he should not understand, he asked us, "What did you said about why? What the hell? What was that?" And then you think, "Oh my god, this is such a this is such a behavior." And
Yes.
was talking to my wife, and I thought, okay, we have to be careful because every time when we think he doesn't understand, he's there. He's inside the conversation.
Yeah. And you're helping him build his encyclopedia.
Exactly. Exactly.
Everything is going in there, and it'll come out in different versions later on in life, and he'll be like,
Exactly.
why do I think that? Oh, I know why, because I heard my mom and dad saying it 20 years ago.
Exactly. Yeah. Um, Michael, the book is not only about immigration, like you said. It's about compromise, like you said before. So I think compromise it's a huge topic when you're an immigrant. Compromise is even a bigger topic. When you are a kid, a child of an immigrant, and I think there is always a price for or to assimilation. You have to pay a price to be accepted and assimilated in the group. And
Yes.
I want to ask you, what do people usually underestimate about that price?
I think what I have learned is that the thing that people underestimate about the price of compromise is the value of the thing they are compromising. Um, and a lot of times they don't see the value until it's already been traded. Sometimes you can get it back, and sometimes you can't. But I know that as a kid growing up in Los Angeles, I very much wanted to be like everybody else, and I was willing to hide everything about myself, about my true self, in order to fit in to that American picture that was so fascinating. But it never worked, you see, because they always saw my darker skin. They always saw my slight accent. You can't, even if you want to, you can't hide all the things that you're trying to hide in order to fit in. Fit in. What I learned, um, at the university level when I was, in my early 20s, and I was, you know, getting myself out into a bigger world, was that it's those very things that you're trying to hide and compromise away that make you or anybody such a unique individual. Um, and that's really the lesson. I mean, the lesson that you learn is that it's not really a compromise that you should be seeking. You should be seeking a way to nurture what makes you unique, because the people that you're wanting to be like are all unique in their own way too. Once you get in there and you figure that out. And so, America and also the world, but America might be a microcosm of it, is made up of a whole lot of unique individuals. And that is their pattern. That is their, blanket. What do you call it? Of all different colors and all different shapes and all different sizes. They all make this one quilt that everybody wants to be a part of. And so the more you give up to try to be part of that quilt, the less likely you are to be part of that quilt, because it's those individual colors and individual, layers that make the quilt in the first place. If that makes any sense.
That makes a lot of sense. I was just about to say that sounds so cool, because you think that you want to belong to a group, and you think, okay, these are the standard settings for the group, but actually the group is actually the sum of all the settings of everyone inside that group. And
Exactly.
I think that's amazing. Like the multiculturalities. I work in an multicultural team at work, and I have to say this is the one of the biggest benefits that I see from my job every day, because you get to exchange food experiences, culture experiences,
Yes.
I don't know, different habits. Like talking about, you always have something to talk about. You always have something to exchange, and that makes the group really good together and connected. And I like that a lot. And I think you are right. We are the summary of our individual experiences.
Yeah. And if you noticed in the book, as it is in America as well, it's those amalgamation of different cultures that create these surprising new things that you couldn't have had otherwise. And so near the end of the book, when the parents, their friends come to visit from Iran, those visitors are fascinated by by pizza. And then they try immediately to figure out how they can add their own Persian twist to the pizza. And really that's how America is. It's just this amalgamation of all these different spices and herbs that build up on each other, until you have a Persian food, Persian khoresht on top of a pizza, and people are selling that, and people are buying it.
Correct. I have to say the one of the nicest discussion that I had with the guy moving from the States to UK, and I asked Milo, what do you miss the most from the food world in America? And I said, man, I miss the Mexican food. I said, man, this this is not what I asked you, but okay.
Yes, that's a perfect answer.
Exactly, and that's the perfect answer, and that describes perfectly the States, right? Because it's a mix of culture. Was it and I might butcher it really bad, but there was an American president who said that you can go in Turkey and live there and you never belong, you never be a Turkish citizen. But if you go to America, in some years you'll become an American, because that's the definition of American.
Yes,
Which president was Ronald Reagan who said that?
definitely not Reagan.
Not Reagan?
I
No,
don't think
then
it was Reagan. I don't know who said it, but that was definitely. I've heard that phrase a lot of times, and it's exactly what makes America such a interesting place to be. And you never get a final picture of America, because it really is constantly evolving. And I'm not necessarily pleased or happy with how it's been going for the past 10 years, but I know that it's just the past 10 years. And the progress continues and the evolution continues, and you can't really
Stop it.
you're not gonna regulate it away, you're not gonna legislate it away, you're not gonna bully it away. It's just what this country is. The whole concept of this country is that. So there's always something fascinating happening, and hopefully it's going to keep going that way.
You mentioned the Iranian culture, or the Iranian culture. I always say Iran because I keep hearing in the English news, and I forgot that actually it's Iran. It's not Iran, because that's the American way of saying, or the English way to say it. You mentioned about the Iranian culture. You talk about the Iranian families that moved there. What do you think that through all these years the American culture misunderstood about Iran and about the Iranian culture?
So much. I mean, there's a lot. I mean, the first thing on the top of my head is that Iranians are not Arab, and that's not a knock or a judgment on Arab culture. It's just the fact that Arab culture is distinct and unique from Persian culture. And to lump them all into the same is just one of those mistakes of convenience that people tend to make. So, I mean, that's just the first thing I would say, is just that. But also, I think that if you look at Persian culture and Iranian culture, um, you will find that they are very educated people. They value education. They value science. They value mathematics. They value architecture. They value literature. Some of the most prominent and ancient poets are the Persian poets and the Persian storytellers. And so it's a very rich and ancient and sturdy and long-standing culture that is not going anywhere anytime soon. And I'm not saying that they are the master race. I'm not saying that they're better than any other culture, but I am saying that there is a lot of misunderstanding and underestimation of Persian life, Persian culture. Similar to America, they're not necessarily a product of their current government either. Their culture transcends politics, and their culture transcends the current state of affairs. So, and I think, you have to spend time doing that. Obviously, if you're just watching the news and you're going to take everything as you hear it, you could finish and just think that you have your opinion and your idea of what Persian culture is. But it's just like American culture isn't what a lot of people think it is. No culture is, and we give America the benefit of the doubt. I do, and we need to give.
We all do.
Yeah, we need to give Iran and Persian culture the benefit of the doubt and understand that they are much more than what is being presented.
True. And Michael, to be honest, I think everyone who's taking the information about the culture of a country from the news is his own fault. So
Yeah,
I
I
think
agree.
that's not something that that you should take from the news. They have a different point. They have a different goal, and of course, lately the goal is to make money.
Of
But
course.
that's again a discussion for a different
Yeah,
podcast, most probably.
yeah,
um, but I really can bet that not most of the people knows that the language spoken in Iran is Farsi, and I think this is something which I found out as well. I have to admit, I found out now right while listening to that journalist from Romania talking about Iran,
yeah,
and I think this is so important to mention it. And like you said, they are not speaking Arabic. They have a completely different culture.
they do.
And I think this is something which we have to emphasize as much as possible, because I think these patterns that we try to fit everyone in, this is so wrong, because this is just dividing us, like
Yeah,
always, in two sides.
and it's just lazy as a citizen of the world.
Oh
As a
yes.
citizen of the world, you don't want to take the lazy approach to anything. This show is about expatriates and about outside of your own culture, and I definitely am that kind of a person who I like to explore and I like to travel and I like to see different cultures. And so it's a lazy way to perceive a culture, um, and you miss out on a lot in the process. So you're just shortchanging yourself when you're not digging in and finding out about everything about it's Iran because we happen to be in the news right now, but the world
Was Ukraine
is
was Ukraine as well, was like like as the history is happening, we try to dig in more and more into topics, and we
yeah.
understand more about the history as the history is happening. Before we move on, I have two things that because I did my Google here while I was talking to
Oh,
you, and it was Ronald Reagan who said that
was it?
in
Oh
his
my!
last yes, in his last speech as a president. Apparently, he read it from a letter that someone sent to him,
Uh-huh.
so that's
Okay.
why it was not him. It was really interesting for me as well. And the second thing that I want to mention, because I said before, I'm always ashamed that I don't remember the name of the author, because I find it disrespectful, and that's why I searched for the book again. And the book is Here is New York, and the author is White, E.B. White,
Oh,
E.B. White.
he's
Yeah,
great. We love him. He's a great writer. He wrote Charlotte's Web,
yeah.
which is a great book. And he also wrote this wonderful book that I got, my English teacher gave to me in high school, and I still have it. It's called The Elements of Style. And it's basically a grammar book, but
I don't know it.
it's such a good grammar book. It's E.B. White and another author, they co-authored it, and it's still in print. I mean, it's been in print for probably 70 years.
I have to search for it. I
Yeah,
didn't know it.
yeah.
It's so interesting. But this is New York. I cannot recommend it enough. It's especially for someone who loves New York. I have to say it's kind of a heart feeling
I will check it out for
book,
sure.
a small book. Yeah. Michael, you built a life. You spent decades building your life as a lawyer, as a husband, as a father, and you kind of hidden the writing. I don't know if from yourself, but from the world. So you called yourself or you describe yourself a closeted writer
Yes.
for many years. You hide it even from the colleagues, from friends, and you say you only share it with some close circle of people that knew about it.
Yeah.
And I want to ask you: was writing always there when you become a lawyer, or was something that you discovered during the after or during the time?
Yeah. No, writing was always my first goal and my first chosen profession. Let's put it that way. When I graduated from high school and I was about to enter university at UCLA, I was trying to pick a major. I got accepted into UCLA as a math major, and I thought I was going to be studying math, but it just wasn't clicking for me. I was exploring journalism. Somebody suggested to me that if I'm interested in journalism, I should get a journal and write my thoughts in it every day. And so I did. At summer school before my freshman year at UCLA, I got a notebook and I started writing my thoughts in it every day. And honestly, everything changed for me. I was still just a 17-year-old kid, freshman at UCLA, but I knew that that's what I wanted to do. And so I never stopped doing it. I became an English major. I got my degree in English and creative writing. I got a master's degree in creative writing from San Francisco State. And I spent many years um, writing and trying to get published. And it's that latter thing, the trying to get published and trying to make a living out of writing, that was the real challenge for me. And so by the time I hit 30, I always sustained myself. I always had jobs. I always paid my bills and paid my rents and paid my tuitions, but I wasn't successful as a writer. I wasn't getting paid as a writer. And I felt the need to have a real job, a grown-up job. So I applied to law school, and in my mind, I thought to myself that I could probably treat being a lawyer the same way that I used to treat being a waiter, which is that I can write and I can make a little money, being a lawyer. But the truth is that being a lawyer is really hard, and it requires a lot of time and energy. And so once I became a lawyer, it sort of took over my life, and my writing did kind of recede into the background, and it became smaller and smaller until it was in that closet. And nobody that I associated with really knew about that history or cared to discuss that history, so I never brought it up. But it was always in the back of my mind, and at some point, I just decided I need to give it more time and energy, and so I had to figure out a way to split my time, between being a lawyer so I can earn a living and raise my kids and my wife, uh, and also nurture my passion for the arts. So that's what happened.
I think that's a really important point for people who are having a job, they are having family, but still have these creative ambitions. You are talking to one of them as well
Yeah.
now, because I'm doing this just out of passion at the moment, and I
Yes.
enjoy the hell of it. And you described time as a currency, Michael,
Yes.
and I have to ask you, what does that really mean in practice?
It is currency and it is finite. And in practice, what that means is you have to be very hard on how you manage your time. And you have to be really diligent, because it's very easy to fall off track. When I decided that I was definitely going to start spending more time writing, because I couldn't not anymore, I made out a schedule. I made out a daily, hourly schedule, and I would dedicate, a certain amount of time every morning, and I still do, about 3 hours every morning. I focus just on writing, my writing. And then I spend the next 4 hours just focusing on law and, earning a living and doing all that. And then I spend about 2 hours later working on the magazine, the Thieving Magpie. And so that's the model of my daily schedule that I try to stick with, and of course, some days other things happen or things come up where you have to kind of augment that schedule. But that's the schedule that if you want to do this, um, and you still have to make a living, you have to manage the hours that you are allotted in a day. You're allowed 24 hours. You need some of that time to sleep. You need some of that time to spend with your family. And then you split the rest of it. you know, and it works if you do it. You know, I'm a big believer in schedule. And if you put it down on paper or on your screen or whatever, you know, you use, and you just, you know, between 7 o'clock and 10 o'clock, it's writing time, and you're not going to, you know, let that get out of the way unless there's an emergency, then that's what you're going to do. And then you stop at 10 o'clock. You stop. It doesn't matter what you're in the middle of. At 10 o'clock, you stop. You can take a 15-minute break, and then, you know, then you start doing your whatever. For me, it's practicing law. So then I meet with clients, or I file papers, or I do, you know, whatever the things that I have to do, and I get that done until about 4 or 5. And you know, it's not the perfect situation. I'd rather get paid to be a writer. I'd rather have a publishing house, a major publishing house, give me a 6-figure advance and say, "Hey, go write your next novel." But I don't live in that world, so I live in my world. So in my world, I just gotta, you know, I'm working on my next thing now. I'm working on my next piece right now, and so you know, I have to just stick with it. And you know, it's definitely not easy, and it's not something that I'm like acting like I'm such a champion or anything like that. No, it's very hard, and most days I feel like I didn't do enough of any of those things that I need to do. But that's the challenge, you know. Every day you wake up and you're like, okay, today I'm gonna, you know, stick to my schedule, and I'm gonna get stuff done. I'm gonna finish some pages. I'm gonna file some papers with the court. You know, I'm gonna read some submissions for the magazine. I'm gonna spend some time with my kids, you know, having dinner and, you know, talking about stuff. And, you know, hopefully I'll go to bed feeling like I made some progress, and then I'm ready to go the next day.
Do you think that discipline is more important than inspiration?
Oh, absolutely. 100%. 100%. Inspiration is for kids.
Oh,
That's what I
that
believe.
was hard.
I mean, that's what I.
That was hard.
You can't wait for inspiration to move you. You have to move inspiration. Inspiration's there, but discipline is the thing that gets you to bring your inspiration to life. So no, I am not a believer, and I used to be. I mean, this is the thing. I used to be, you know, oh yeah, inspiration is going to come to me, and I'm going to do this kind of stuff. But no, it doesn't work. You know, there's a book that my therapist gave me called "The War of Art."
Yes, I know it.
And there's one section there where he has a lot of quotes from writers, and I think one of those quotes was something about how if you're relying on inspiration, you're never going to get where you want to go. You have to work hard. You have to be disciplined, and you have to work hard. You have to show up every day, and answer the bell every day. The inspiration comes when you're working hard. The inspiration comes when you've locked in your 3 hours in the morning, and you've dedicated those 3 hours, which are precious hours. You've dedicated those to your art, to your craft. And when you start working like that, the inspiration will come. It's almost a guarantee that it's going to come. Whereas if you're waiting for inspiration to come on its own, then you could be waiting for days, or you could be waiting for, you know. So the discipline and the tightness of the schedule that you create for yourself is the thing that brings about that inspiration every day from 7 to 10. So that is my belief. I think inspiration is great, but without discipline, it's child's play. You have to be a grown up about it.
Stephen Pressfield wrote The
Yes.
War of Art.
Yes.
An amazing book, and I think this is the story of the muse as well. You just, if you sit long enough, the muse will come. Just wait for it. It will come. It will be there. You have to show up to meet
You have
her.
to show up for it. Yeah, that's what it is.
Exactly. Do you see it as making time for it, or do you see it as well as giving something else up for it?
Well, you phrased it in an interesting way because you don't make time. Time is there. So you give up something for it. You give up time. Um, you have to accept, if you're dedicated to it, you have to accept that some days it's going to be difficult. You have to accept that if you're going to work from 7 to 10 every morning writing for free, basically, those are 3 hours every day that you're not going to get paid. You're not going to make money. You're not going to, work on law stuff. It comes at a cost, but that's the commitment and that's the investment, I guess. You could, in 21st century terminology, you're investing in yourself. Yeah, there's a cost. There's a cost to all great art. All great artists are throughout history. Some of them give their ear. Some of them, go to jail. You do whatever you do. But if you're dedicated to your art, and we're in the 21st century, so we're not in this in the age of patronage, where the king is going to give you a stipend, or you know those days are over. We're living in this world now where nobody supports the arts but the artists themselves. And so the dedication really has to be there from within.
I think you always have to pick your fights, and I think if you want to fight for something that you like that much, you have to pick your fights really good, and maybe give up the dumb scrolling that we all do, and give up the time that you.
My God, of course.
That exactly, they give up the things that most probably will only get your day even worse, to do something which might get your day better.
Yes, I mean, definitely the social media and the access to random information that is built to distract you is a very dangerous new thing that kills writers and kills artists and kills anybody, really, because it takes all your motivation and it takes all your actual physical time away. You can spend 20 minutes or 40 minutes and you won't even know. And then you'll look up and it's an hour later and you're like, oh, what did I just do? And so, yeah, I think that discipline that we were just talking about is much harder than it's ever been because of those, the professional distraction industry.
Exactly. But you mentioned it, you put it so nice, Michael. You said the random information. I think this is such a good description. Oh, I have to see when is the next ship gonna arrive on Mars. Oh, but then no, I have to see. I don't think we make it on the moon. We will make it on the moon. No, you didn't care about
It's
this.
insane.
Yeah, but it's science. You didn't care about this until now. Just let it go. And I think this is so important.
I just saw an ad last week. This guy comes on and says, do you want to be able to see what your house looks like from space? And I'm like, not particularly. I mean, I know what my house looks like. Why would I want to see it from space? But that's one of those things like, oh, if you download this app, you can look at your house from space. Like, I get it. It's fascinating, but really, is it? It's not that fascinating.
No. I set up for myself a limit of social media of 5 minutes per day. And I have to say, you don't even realize when those 5 minutes are gone.
Yeah.
And we talk about 5 minutes, and they are like it's a snap of a finger. So I'm always thinking about people, because of course I extend it sometimes and it's more than 5 minutes, but I want to have it as a 5 minutes because I'm aware when the 5 minutes are gone. Because if you don't have it, then you are not aware when the time has.
Yeah, and that's part of it. I mean, part of making a schedule for yourself, a daily one or a weekly one or however you do it, is that you can build in that distraction time too as a little cookie for yourself, if that's your thing. You know what I mean? So you can be like, okay, yeah, you know what? From 10 o'clock to 10:15, I'm gonna scroll. And then I'll get back to work. So it sounds boring or it sounds undramatic, but managing the hours and minutes that you have been allotted by life, managing those minutes is the key to all your successes. Really, I mean, I can't imagine, you just like randomly doing a million different things and being successful at it. But if you're going to be like, this block of time is for this thing, this project, this block of time is for this project. Um, I think it's more of a guarantee of you getting to where you want to go, wherever that is.
Absolutely, absolutely. Michael, you mentioned that nobody's really supporting art, and it's a nice move on to the next discussion point when I think it's important to mention that you, besides the fact that you are assigning time for you to write, you are assigning time for you to publish other authors, which are most probably in your situation, or not really doing it as a main job. Yeah. And I want to ask you, was it because of rejection? Was it due to frustration? What was the reason to create the Thieving Magpie?
Yes.
Sorry.
Yeah, you were absolutely right. It is because I spent my 20s getting rejections. I mean, I got some acceptances, but I got a lot of rejections, and it was never fun. And then when I finished my first draft of this novel, on advice of other people, I sent it out to agencies and to publishers, and just like randomly and sometimes targeted. But whatever I did, I mean, I sent it to many agents and many publishers, and I got some interest, but not a lot. Nobody wanted to publish it at the end of the day. And it was frustrating because I really thought that there was always barriers and layers put up in front of me and other writers as well that I spoke with. Was that it's become so difficult to break through. The whole industry of publishing has been so fixated towards blockbusters and film adaptations, and I mean, all of that stuff is good, but if it becomes the sole formula, then you're never going to break in if you have anything that's not that. And the agents act as the gatekeepers before you even get to the publisher. So it's just it's a thick wall. It's a very much like when I was in second grade and I was on the outside and I was trying to get into something, I was trying to get in with the cool kids or the established kids or whatever. And then you realize they're not even helping. I mean, I have a friend of mine who does have an agent and who did get a publisher, and he ended up doing almost the same things that I do now as an independent. He has to do his own marketing. He has to do his own, so it just occurred to me that with technology being as available as it is, I could probably create a website, make it work, create a good logo, create an ethos of, art, good art by people that take their art very seriously, and see if I could swing that myself as a publisher. I mean, originally I thought I was going to publish my own work, but honestly, since the second or third issue, which was 8 years ago, I haven't published any of my own work except for editorials. There's a lot of great writers. There's a lot of great poets. There's a lot of great photographers and essayists and artists. They're out there. And if they see a platform and they like what they see in that platform, they're going to submit to it, and it feeds on itself. And it's a great way to build community among artists. It's a great way to bring people from all different backgrounds and also different parts of the world, whether it's Europe or Asia or Australia, or they submit from everywhere. That's the beauty of the internet, and so it's become its own thing, its own entity, and I'm very proud of it. It's a lot of fun. I mean, it's also a lot of work when it comes time to publishing each new issue, because there's a lot of reading that has to be done, and there's a lot of stuff to sift through and to organize and coordinate. But it is rewarding. Getting each issue out is a real win. It's a coup every time.
It's an accomplishment because you feel you give the chance that you didn't get to have, and I think
Yeah.
that makes it gives you a good feeling.
Yes.
Are you a Rossini fan, or why the name decision?
Yes, I am a Rossini fan, and I do love that overture of the Thieving Magpie. Um, and I've always been fascinated with that particular overture. I don't know why, for since the '90s. And I always thought if I ever do something, I always thought that I might open up a bookstore, and I would call it the Thieving Magpie Booksellers. Um, but then when I thought, I wouldn't mind figuring out how to become a publisher and how to do this literary magazine thing. And so when that became more real, Thieving Magpie seemed like the natural thing to call it. So that's what I did.
What makes a writer memorable for your magazine, Michael? And maybe the most important question: how hard is it to reject?
Okay, well, what makes a writer memorable? Honestly, it's I was just thinking this last night, as a matter of fact, because I accepted somebody's story, somebody's submission, and when I let her know that she's accepted, I thought to myself, well, why did I accept her? Um, was it was it the right choice? I was just, I always do that anyway. And honestly, the story that she wrote was pretty good. Wasn't the best story I've ever read. It was a pretty good story, but the writing was really good. And I could tell that this was a talented person who was dedicated to her craft. I could just tell from the way she had put her sentences together and put her words together that she was a serious writer, and she had some real good writing skills, and her stories might become better down the road. This story was pretty good. It wasn't great, but it was clear to me that she had skills, she had talent, and also that she had worked on it. You know what I mean? It read to me like somebody who was aware of the craft.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what stays with me, honestly, is the craft, the craftsmanship, I guess. Um, you can see it, you can read it, and you can hear it. And sometimes that translates into a marvelous story or image. And sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it translates into a pretty good story. But if the craft work is there, I appreciate that, because I know that they take it seriously, and they put real effort into it. And so um, that's what I look for, and that's what I when I see it, I let them know, hey, you know what? I'm a fan, and I'm going to take your story in for the next issue. From a rejection standpoint, in the beginning, it was very hard to reject anybody because I was so appreciative that I even got a submission, because I didn't know how to do any of this stuff. I was learning on the fly. So just the fact that somebody had submitted to me, I was so grateful that I felt horrible having to reject them. Obviously, that after 8 years, it's not as hard as it used to be. But I do sometimes have to reject somebody because one of those elements is just short. If they have really good writing and the story is really terrible, or it's just not doesn't make sense, then I also, that's a hard one for me. And also vice versa. If it's a really great story, but it's poorly told, you know, and so I let them know. I mean, I don't just give them a boilerplate rejection. I let them know. I say, look, this
Mm-hmm.
your writing is strong. Your story needs work. Come back, when you've worked on it a little bit. Or your story is great, but you need to work on your writing. You're not there yet. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I try to be a coach or be a teammate or whatever, metaphor there is there. I try to make it understood that we're all in this kind of at the same level. We're all working on our craft. We're all taking our work seriously as storytellers. Um, and this one didn't work, but the next one might. If it's bad all around, then I just say, look, this is not ready. This piece is not ready, and good luck and keep working. I definitely always close every rejection with that, with keep working and keep writing, because that's how people get better, just repetition.
Absolutely. And I think it's really important to it's really important the way in which you reject, because I think like you said, a blunt rejection, like you're not in, I think that would be
I've
painful
gotten
for
those,
everyone.
they
Exactly. I'm pretty sure that were developed by your own experiences. So the way in which you reject is also developed by your own experience. I think that's important. Michael, publishing the novel when you were 60, I think it shows a lot of dedication, because you never gave up on it. And I want to ask you, did it feel for you late, or did it feel for you just in time when you were ready to publish it?
Well, I mean, I didn't really think about it like that. I mean, it came out when it came out. It would have been great.
Mm-hmm.
It would have been great if I did all of this that we've been talking about. It would have been wonderful if I could have done it in my 20s or my 30s, meaning being more diligent and being more dedicated and not waiting for the muse to come and things like that. Um, I wish I had that discipline in my 30s and my 20s, so that I could have written more and finished more of my pieces. So yeah, I mean, I feel the lateness of it only to the extent that I feel like uh, there's less time now to write all of the things that I still intend on writing, and I wish I had
Mm-hmm.
more time to do it. But otherwise, I can't help being a late bloomer. Some people are late bloomers, but that's one of the reasons why I really do believe that. As much as it might be anathema to the concept of artists, you have to be dedicated and diligent to your craft at an early age if you plan on having a real life as an artist, because it's hard work, and if you want to make a living at it, it's even harder. So when I was in my 20s and 30s, I wrote. I was a writer. That's all I focused on, and that's all I did. And I had a lot of side jobs, but I also didn't have the discipline at all. I wish I did.
I think that's a nice statement. I think that's an amazing lesson for everyone who is in the situation. I think discipline is important, and inspiration and talent are not so important as discipline is, because
Yeah,
both of them are
for sure.
developable. I don't know if that's a word, but I don't know what I meant to say. But I think discipline is the most important one. Michael, I want to thank you a lot for the time that you gave me today. Before we wrap the discussion, I have one more question,
Yes.
and I want to ask you, what does success look like for you today?
Well, I can give you the answer that sounds really cool, or I can.
No, 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 no.
Success for me is me being able to write and complete all the different pieces that I are in my queue, and not being so worried about where the money comes from. That's really the truth. If I could find a way to be able to work on my writing more than just 3 hours a day, and have to worry about paying the bills, I would consider that to be a gift that I would not take for granted. But I mean, I don't know how realistic that is at this point, but being realistic, if I'm defining it by realistic terms, I'm probably living the most successful life I could be living right now, because I get to write. I get to write things that I love, and I'm getting better at it every day. And I get to have the ability to earn a living, not dependent on the writing. And that's, I used to really be angry with the lawyer side of my life because I didn't want to practice law. I wanted to write. And now I think I'm lucky that I put myself through law school, and I passed the bar exam, and all of those things are hard. Getting into law school is hard. Passing the bar is hard. Those things are hard, and I got lucky. I don't know how I got into law school. I was a goof off. I don't know how I passed the bar exam. I mean, I did. And so, I guess and that's pretty successful for me, that I get to be a writer, and I also get to be my own patron, and support my craft without having to depend on a publisher or some sort of an external force. Although it would be nice. It would be nice. It would be nice if I didn't have to do that, but that's the fantasy version of success, and this is the real version, which is, I'm doing it. I'm doing the things that I want to do, for the most part.
But I think both of them are amazing. Not only the fantasy one, but also the realistic one. I think there are a lot of people who would like to be in your position.
Yeah.
I think it's always important. First of all, I need to say you are extremely modest, Michael, because it's hard to say that you were lucky passing through law school, because usually law school has nothing to do with luck, has a lot to do with a lot of work and dedication to be able to go through it. So don't get yourself so down to say you are lucky, because that can't be the case. If you could say about any other university, I was lucky to finish it, but not law school, not medicine, not the vocational universities. And second, I think the really important part is that we get to enjoy the way, the goal, not only the goal, because as soon as we enjoy the goal, we are losing a lot of time to try to be there. And actually, when you reach the goal, you have only a few seconds when you are there, and then you look at the next one, and then the next one, and the next one. It's a never-ending story.
Very true. Very true.
I think the goal, the key is just to enjoy the process. However hard it looks like or complicated it looks like, I always like to think about me 10 years ago, 20 years ago, what were my dreams? And it could be that my dream was to have this job that I have today, and to have this life that I have today. And I'm not aware of it anymore, because it was some years ago. And I do think we're having good opportunities to be able to do all that we are doing.
Absolutely, I agree.
Michael, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for giving me the chance to talk to you. I will link the book in the show notes description on all the platforms. So whomever wants to order it, they should do it. It's an amazing story of the 70s in the US. And also I will link I will put the link in of your magazine for whomever wants to read this. A nice source of inspiration. And Michael, I hope soon we get to do this again sometime on your next book as well.
I had a great time. I really did. I really appreciate the time that you put into it.
Thank you so much. Talk to you soon.
All right. Thank you. Take care.